Hey everyone, it's Catherine and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing all the books that I read in 2022 and sharing which ones I think that you guys should read. I'm not going to be talking about each book in depth. I'm gonna kind of just skim over the ones that I didn't really love, that were kind of irrelevant to me, and focus more on the ones that I loved, that were my favorites, and talk about all the tropes and all the reasons why I think you guys would love them too. So yeah, let's get started. So going back to the very beginning of the year in January, I first started the year with the ACOTAR series, also known as the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. It is absolutely amazing and I would recommend it to anyone who breathes. The first book in the series is called A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it is about this just high fantasy fictionalized world that's split into two different parts. So you have the human lands and then you also have the Fae world. That world is split into 7 different courts. Each of these courts has a theme. So you have your 4 seasonal courts, which are summer, winter, fall, and spring, and the dawn, the day, and the night court. And so the first book is basically about a human who ends up stumbling this world and gets fully immersed in it. And the world building aspect of the series is just so beautiful. It's so intricately and exquisitely described. And so all these courts have High Lords as well who rule them each, and so you get to see how they interact. It's a very politicized world. There's 3 sisters in the series and each of them has a story. So the first 3 books in the series are all about the first sister, and she's kind of the main character. This one, A Court of Frost and Starlight, is kind of a side novella. And then the next sister, this is her book. It's called A Court of Silver Flames. This one definitely has the most spice. So just a warning, if you're not expecting that, this is like probably 80% spice. The third sister, we're still waiting on her book to come out. Actually, no one knows if the next book is even going to be about her sister or who it's going to be about, but I think that's something that you can expect down the road. So the next books that I continued the year with, and these I read kind of sprinkled throughout the year, so they weren't really in one cohesive month, but over the course of several months as I was reading other books, is the Throne of Glass series, also a Sarah J. Maas series, so it's part of her universe. If you don't know, there's 3 series that are part of her universe. The other series is the Crescent City series, which I have not read yet, but I look forward to reading in 2023. The first book is called Throne of Glass. I actually tried to read this 2 years ago and got through it, but could not get into the rest of the series because it was just lacking in so many areas and so many things, which I know I said the series has its aspects that I love and it's still amazing, but the first book is probably not the best one. It's something that you have to read for a while, and then there's going to be a point in the series where things start clicking for you. I always refer to the series as being the end game for readers as Endgame is for Marvel fans, because that's literally what happens. There's a point where you realize how amazing this world is. The world building is just so complex, and there's a lot more to it. I can't say too much without spoiling the end of the series, but the series is everything that you need in the series. It's high fantasy fiction. It's about an assassin / lost princess, and you have this kind of royal court, royal world, very similar to ACOTAR. Reminds me a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know why, but Elena, the main character, reminds me of Jack Sparrow a lot. So if you're into Pirates of the Caribbean and are looking for something like that, please pick this up. It's so good. Like I said, it's something that you have to read for a while to really get into, but once you get into it, you're lost forever. You're going to be reading this and nothing else in your life is going to have meaning until you finish the series. So the next few books I read were just also sprinkled throughout the year. There weren't really any particular months that I read these in, but I did have my Colleen Hoover era this year, so I read 5 of her books. Started with It Ends With Us. This was my very first Colleen Hoover book just because it was the most popular one at the time, and it wasn't one of my favorites. It does detail abuse. It is a very heavy book, a lot of heavy topics. I also read It Starts With Us this year, which is a new Colleen Hoover release that just came out in the fall, and I loved it so much more than It Ends With Us. It's about how the main characters, who are childhood best friends to lovers, move on after witnessing abuse and start a new family and basically start a new life, start over and move on and break the cycle. So I love this one, would recommend this one so much. Unfortunately, you can't really read this one without reading the first one, but still probably one of the better Colleen Hoover reads that I've read this year. So after that, I read November 9th and Ugly Love by the same author, and these books for me were just not it. The men in them are very questionable. The situations are just so far out there and so unrealistic. It just weren't for me. I don't like books like that. And I don't like the fact that the female main characters ended up with these guys still. It's just too much for me to wrap my head around it. That's all on these books. The last book I read by her was Verity, and I loved this so much. If I rated books, I don't really rate books, but if I did, I would make this a 5-star read just because it's that good. I wish I had read this one first because this was the best one. It is very creepy, very like horror-like, psychological thriller, mindfuck, all of the above, but it was so good. It really like plays with your mind, plays with your emotions and your perception of things, which I really loved. I had never read a book like this, and this was my first one, so maybe I don't have a standard of reference that I can really compare this to, but this definitely makes me want to get into more kind of psychologically challenging books like that, and so I think this was probably my favorite book by her. The next book I read earlier in the year, Love and Olives by Jenna Welch. This is kind of part of a series. It's not really a series, they're standalones, but they're all very similar storylines. The other 2 books are called Love and Luck and Love and Gelato, and so they're all different travel romances. So Love and Luck takes place in Ireland, and then Love and Gelato takes place in Italy. This one takes place in Greece and is by far my favorite that I've read of the 3, but it's a very kind of like high school-ish book. If you're in high school, I think you would really enjoy this a lot more, but I really liked it as an adult, so I would still recommend picking that up if you're into travel romances. It's just the cutest little travel romance. Like, this is the kind of adventure that you would want to have in Greece. Kind of meshes all the typical like touristy attractions and activities that you would want to do, but like with someone that you fall in love with. And of course there's also like some personal family drama and like personal drama that the main character is going through at the time, and so she uses Greece to escape all of that and ends up finding love. So it's a very cute, soft love kind of book. It's best friends to lovers, the guys just to die for, and I really enjoyed it. The next book was Ruin and Rising. It's part of a series. It's the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo, and this is just something that I had to wrap up reading. I read the first 2 last year, so that was Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm, and so there's a Netflix show based off of these, but I'd say it's nothing special. It's kind of like the classic ending that I expected the series to have. No dramatic plot twist or anything, so that was a little bit disappointing, and I think there are some plot holes in it, so I'm not too sure about the author, but I do want to read the Six of Crows series, which I know is very popular and by the same author, so I'll probably pick that up next year. So the next book is Archer's Voice by Sheridan, and I love this book. It wouldn't be in my top 10, but it was still really good. It's definitely like The Boy Falls Harder. If you saw my Taylor Swift video, this is the book that I had picked out for the song Lavender Haze, just because it was very soft, lovey. Next couple of books are The Love Hypothesis and Love in the Brain by Hazelwood. These were some of the most anticipated books this year, and I know a lot of people read them. I actually don't have Love on the Brain right now because one of my friends is reading it and she just finished it, but they're both super cute stories. The characters are very like cartoonish, very simple-minded, but just they're really cute love stories. I would say the tropes are very similar, like enemies to lovers, academic rivals to lovers, because they are both STEM romances, pretty grumpy sunshine relationships. I think both of them would probably make my top 10. The next couple books I want to talk about are The Spanish Love Deception and The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. They are both so good, very similar vibes to Hazelwood's books, so I thought I would put them next to each other, but very similar tropes, enemies to lovers. The first one, the protagonist is Hispanic. I felt like really connected to her, which is something that I previously didn't know I would really value in the book, but was really surprising to me. So that's one of the reasons I loved it so much. But it's enemies to lovers. They're kind of like workplace rivals as well. And it's just very steamy, very spicy, and everything that you would want in a romance book. The American Roommate Experiment is very similar to The Spanish Love Deception. There is some crossover. The characters do reoccur, but it has its like own cute little quirks that I just love so much. It's very best friends to lovers kind of thing. They end up in this situation where they have to live together. It's also like the fake dating trope, and so there's all these cute little things to it. So the next 3 books are called Beach Read, The People We Meet on Vacation, and Book Lovers, which I do not have right now, but they're all by Emily Henry, the same author. She has become one of my favorite authors of all time. She has a new release coming in 2023, which I think is called A Happy Place or The Happy Place, something like that, but I'm so excited for it. These books are probably in my top 5 for this year. I love them so much. They all have little quirks to them. I love books that are about people who love books, so the characters all love or work in books or work in publishing in some way. People we meet on vacation. She's a travel writer. She writes for a magazine. And then Beach Read is a beach house romance. It falls within that trope and it's so cute. It falls within academic rivals to lovers as well. They knew each other in college and competed against each other. Both now super successful writers who are challenging each other to write in the other's genre. So that's kind of what fills the plot, but you see them fall in love. The other book, which my friend is borrowing right now, is called Book Lovers. The two characters are like super workaholic. They work in the literary publishing world, so they're both obsessed with books, and that's actually how they connect. It's small town. Beach Read is also small town, so there's a lot of like small town romance going on. And I just love the main female character in this book because she is like such a boss bitch character. I think the Spanish Love Deception also had like a boss female Latina character as well. And I think that's so rare for me to see in books. I don't see it a lot, is that type of like very strong assertive character. So personally, I love books like that. If you do too, I think you should pick this one up. The next book is one of my favorite books this year. Definitely in my top 5, and it is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This one is a cabin romance. The characters are childhood best friends to lovers, literally knew each other since they were like little kids. Reading is the thing that they bonded over in books, and so it's just super cute, super romantic. They end up getting estranged as best friends, but then reunite afterwards. It's just such a cute book. It takes place in San Francisco, and if you didn't know, I went to school in Berkeley, so it's just very easy for me to imagine the characters and the setting and everything that went on because I lived it. So yeah, it's just a great book. Definitely in my top 5. I think if I had to give any book 5 stars this year, like this would be it. Next couple books I kind of want to talk about in conjunction, even though they're written by different people, because I think they're just really similar. The first one is Funny You Should Ask by Elissa Sussman. The other one is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I feel like When in Rome is just a really close knockoff of Funny You Should Ask. They both have very similar plot lines. This one is about a celebrity who a journalist interviews. She ends up having this whole like romantic escapade with him and they fall in love. But there's something that happens and they end up not talking for like 10 years. And then she gets asked to interview him again. So it's a lot of like tension as they're trying to relive all the events that happened back then. And also the guy is like wanting to have a relationship with her again, so they're trying to move past that, and that there's just a lot of spice, there's a lot of tension, there's just a lot that goes on. This book is actually based on a true story, which I did not even know about, but the male character who's an actor is based on the real life actor Chris Evans, and this is apparently something that happened to him and a journalist that came to interview with him, but the author thought that it would just make for a great story. And so she ended up writing it, but added the extra part of them like reuniting 10 years later and them actually getting together. So it's plagiarized. So this one, When in Rome, is very similar. Kind of a less well-written knockoff version for me, which maybe might be controversial and sounds super bad, but I'm trying to say that in the nicest way possible. It's reversed, so the female main character is the one that's super famous, and she ends up going to this small town called Rome in Kentucky to escape her stardom and like get a break or whatever. And there's like all this drama going on in her life, and so she meets this guy there who really wants nothing to do with her. It's kind of like enemies to lovers in that way. And they fight like constantly and don't really get along, but they start to fall in love, and he discovers that she's really different than what she's portrayed as in the industry and on TV and everything, and he starts to fall for her. It was very poorly written for me, and I know that Sarah Adams wrote the cheat sheet, which I've heard good things about, so I do want to pick that up in the next year and see how good that is. But I feel like the writing was super poor for me, and it took me a really long time to get through this, even though it's super short. I think it's like less than, like exactly 300 pages. So To me, this could have been, probably couldn't have, I don't know, just not something that was super of substance and not memorable to me. The last book I have to talk about is Normal People by Rooney. It wasn't one of my favorite books this year. I feel like everyone else loved it, and it's probably super deep, but I didn't read that much into it. I feel like I want to look up some articles on this book and just find more about the context behind it, because I think for me, it's just about two people who, you know, constantly fall in and out of love, and I think that's kind of the reality of life, is that you're not always going to be in love with the person that you end up with, and that there's all these barriers, and it's kind of this constant cycle of reaffirming that. But it wasn't something that was super deep to me, because I feel like this is something that people experience every day, and just to see it in a book wasn't anything that, it just wasn't a book that I was really looking for. It's kind of overrated for me, because I feel like a lot of people talk about this on Instagram and love it so much and love Rooney, and maybe I need to pick up another one of her books next year to see if I really like her style. But one of the things that bugged me the most about this book was the fact that there were no quotation marks. So you couldn't tell when the characters were talking to each other, and I felt like I struggled with that the entire book, and it just took away from me being able to like focus on the meaning and everything. And I guess the point is that nothing was really being said. Maybe that's what it was, but such a confusing book. Honestly, don't think that I took the time to really read into it that much, but that's just kind of what my experience was. And that is all the books that I read this year. I ended up reading a total of 33 books. So I beat my goal by 3 extra books, and I read a lot of them that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I think next year my plan is to double that goal and try to read 60 books. And now that I'm not in school anymore and have a lot more time, I think that will definitely be possible, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's all the books I have to share. I hope you really enjoyed watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!